still looking at the life of Christ, and I got to tell you, we are in for a grand adventure with Jesus tonight. I have to tell you, I'm excited really about us getting to learn together tonight. So I told you last time, I asked you what kind of movies you liked, and then I told you what kind I like. And I said, I like mystery, I like adventure, even a little bit of danger, maybe even just a little bit on the spooky side. Well, the scriptures we're going to look at tonight, it includes all of those things. Because what we're going to look at tonight is Jesus and his disciples going across the Sea of Galilee into Gentile territory. Okay? So you've got Jesus and his disciples coming face to face with demons. Not just one, but a whole bunch of them. The disciples at one point think they see a ghost. It's not really a ghost, but they think it's a ghost at first. We've got storms. We've got them traveling to the godless land of the Gentiles, a land of great darkness, spiritual darkness. So just a little bit creepy, a little bit spooky, but we don't have to worry because Jesus is our tour guide, and so he'll be with us all the way. So are you excited? Okay, good. I've been worried if you weren't. All right. So the other thing I should say about this is we're going to look at just four. I've pulled just four events where Jesus travels. During his Galilean ministry, he travels outside of Galilee, outside of the area of the region of Galilee into Gentile territory. These aren't necessarily, they didn't happen all at the same time. We need to see them more as sort of incursions into Gentile land. So Jesus' base of operations is Galilee and the sea, the area around the Sea of Galilee, Capernaum, all that area. But every once in a while, he will get in the boat with his disciples, and they'll go to the other side into Gentile territory and make these incursions. That's what we're going to look at tonight. All right? Cool? All right, good. This is interactive. You have to kind of give me a sign every once in a while. All right. So we're going to look first at Jesus casting demons into swine, and this is in Mark chapter 5. Now I'm going to go ahead and we're going to put, is the map handy there? Let's go ahead and put the map up. There we go. So if you have the map that I handed out a week or two ago, so this is the area around the Sea of Galilee. If you think in these terms, pretty much everything east of the Sea of Galilee is going to be Gentile land. So west of Galilee, the Sea of Galilee is Jewish population, but everything east is going to be Gentile. Now, this incident we're about to look at involves Jesus traveling over to the east side of the Sea of Galilee, and he and his disciples, and they meet this demon-possessed man. Now, there's some question as to where this is. Some texts read Gadarenes, some read Gerasene, Gergesene. I mean, there's all sorts of different textual variations. So, and is it the town? Is it the region? You would think if he's come, I mean, Gerges, so that area seems the most likely candidate because wherever it was apparently was near, the Sea of Galilee. He comes across the Sea of Galilee and meets this man. But if it's Gadara, you see down there by the Decapolis, and the man goes and spreads the word around the Decapolis. So, the best we're going to be able to say is that it's somewhere on the eastern side of the Sea of Galilee, and there are textual variations. We'll talk a little bit about that when we read this. All right, so let's read the text, and then we'll go back and say a word or two about it. I'm in Mark chapter 5, verse 1. Then they came to the other side of the sea, to the country of the Gadarenes. And when he had come out of the boat, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit, who had his dwelling among the tombs, and no one could bind him, not even with chains, because he had often been bound with shackles and chains. The chains had been pulled apart by him, and the shackles broken in pieces. Neither could anyone tame him. And always, night and day, he was in the mountains and in the tombs, crying out and cutting himself with stones. And when he saw Jesus from afar, he ran and worshipped him. And he cried out with a loud voice and said, "What have I to do with you, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I implore you by God that you do not torment me." For he said to him, come out of the man, unclean spirit." And then he asked him, "What is your name?" And he answered, saying, "My name is Legion, for we are many." Also he begged him earnestly that he would not send them out of the country. Now a large herd of swine was feeding there near the mountains. So all the demons begged him, saying, "Send us to the swine, that we may enter them." And at once Jesus gave them permission. Then the unclean spirit went out and entered the swine. There were about 2,000. And the herd ran violently down the steep place into the sea and drowned in the sea. So those who fed the swine fled, and they told it in the city and in the country, and they went out to see what it was that had happened. Then they came to Jesus and saw the one who had been demon-possessed and had the legion sitting and clothed in his right mind, and they were afraid. Those who saw it told them how it happened to him who had been demon-possessed and about the swine. They began to plead with him to depart from their region. And when he got into the boat, he who had been demon-possessed begged him that he might be with him. However, Jesus did not permit him, but said to him, "Go home to your friends and tell them what great things the Lord has done for you and how he has had compassion on you." And he departed and began to proclaim in Decapolis all that Jesus had done for him, and all marveled. Can y'all hear me okay? I'm having a hard time hearing myself. Give me just a little bit, because I feel like I'm straining my voice. Yeah, that's a little bit better. Okay, so this miracle is significant. Why do you think this miracle, what about this makes it significant, would you say? He cast out, so for one thing, it affirms Jesus' power over demons. Not just a demon, but he asks the man, "What's your name?" And the demons respond, "Legion, for we are many." So, this is one of the first miracles that we see where Jesus is exercising authority over demons. We've seen him exercise authority over nature. We've seen him heal, but now he's exercising authority over demons. What else makes it significant, would you think? Sorry, what? Exactly. So it anticipates the gospel mission to the Gentiles. Up until now, what we've seen primarily has been Jesus working with Jews as the Jewish Messiah. Now he's going into Gentile territory, and he's performing miracles on behalf of the Gentiles. So this is important. This is the first ministry event of Jesus that is recorded that's set outside of Palestine. In other words, outside of Israel proper. This is in Gentile land. So that in and of itself makes it significant. Now, I sort of alluded to this next question a little bit earlier. True or false, based on the existing textual evidence, it's not possible to pinpoint precisely where the event took place. True, that's true. So there's Matthew, Mark, Luke record the event. They record different names. The texts themselves vary. The copies of the manuscripts that we have variation. If you have a study Bible or something, it may point that out. Right. So mine says Gadara, but I have a footnote that says in the newest, best manuscripts, Gerasenes. So I'm pointing this out not to confuse you, but just so that you will understand. You get everything from Gerasenes to Gadarenes to Gergesenes. Is it? And then you have to ask yourself the question: okay, is it talking about a particular village, or is it talking about the region? Is it talking about the region of the Gadarenes, or a particular village? Because it wouldn't seem the area seems to not fit with being near the Sea of Galilee. All we can say for certain is that it occurred somewhere on the eastern side of the Sea of Galilee in predominantly Gentile area. I only point this out because some people see textual variation and they just freak out. Oh, the Bible's wrong. The Bible's not wrong. It's just that there is a variation in some of the manuscripts that we have. We don't have, the original manuscripts don't exist anymore, okay? So what we have are copies of copies of copies. And so it's just an attempt to try to figure out what did the original say. It doesn't change the meaning of it in any way, but we can't, in this particular case, the best we can say is it was somewhere on the east side of the Sea of Galilee in Gentile territory. Doesn't affect the meaning of it at all right? Now, so the demons, so he confronts this man, and the demons that are in the man, what do they say to him in verse 7? They cry out with a loud, yeah. So what do they know about it? They know who he is. They know he's the Son of God. They also know he has the power to cast them out, which is significant. So they not only know who he is, they know he has power over them. They know his name. They call him Jesus. They know his name. Now, in ancient times, there was a belief among ancient peoples that if you knew someone's name, you had some sort of power over them. In other words, if you know someone's name, then you can somehow, utter some sort of curse and you have some sort of power over them. Jesus turns it back on them. They call his name. They not only call his name, they say who he is, the Son of God, maybe in an attempt to try to bluff whoever, Jesus or the man or whoever, into thinking, well, we know his name, so we have control over Jesus. Jesus turns it back on them and says, what's your name? To the man, what's your name? And the demons speak for the man. We are legion. Legion was a Roman division of troops. So by the demons saying this, in other words, it's their way. Again, it sounds kind of like they're trying to intimidate in some way. Oh, we're legion. We're many. And then immediately they begin to beg him, please don't send us out of the country. Please don't send us to the abyss. Please, just let us go to this this herd of swine. And so they immediately understand who Jesus is and that he has power over them. It's interesting, you see in the man a sort of a mixed deal. At times you see the man, and at times you see the man controlled by the demons. When he meets Jesus, verse 6, when he sees Jesus from afar, he ran and worshiped him. That's the man. But then the demons in verse 7 cry out, what have I to do with you, Jesus, Son of Most High God? I implore you by God that you do not torment me. Well, this isn't the man, this is the demons speaking. And Jesus understands that and says, come out of the man, unclean spirit. So it's interesting, you've got the man wanting to be better and yet not able to. And I mean, sometimes we find ourselves in that situation, and that's not always necessarily due to demon possession. But sometimes, we can find ourselves wanting to be. I want to be better, but sometimes the demon speaks for us, and I'm speaking metaphorically here. So they ask to be cast into this herd of swine that's feeding nearby. And Jesus permits that. He permits that they be cast out of the man and into this herd of swine, and the herd of swine run over the cliff and into the sea and drown. So what's significant about the pigs? They're unclean, that's right. They're unclean animals. So there's, you've got unclean spirits going into unclean animals. They jump over the cliff and drown. And so, and this preacher joke is not original to me, but I'll use it anyway. This is the first recorded incident of deviled ham. Ha 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 ha. I need the drum roll thing. Anyway, the rim shot thing. Okay, but I got to tell you, so we're touring the area around the Sea of Galilee, and our little tour guide is telling us all about this story, about the demons, going in the herd of swine, and he points out, this is where some people believe this is the area that it happened. Nobody really knows for sure, but so that night, like I've got my feet, I've got my shoes off and my britches legs rolled up to my knee, and I'm wading out in the Sea of Galilee because our hotel was right there, And first thought I thought is Jesus walked on water on the Sea of Galilee, and Peter walked on water on the Sea of Galilee, and I thought, I'm going to see if I can. I really didn't think so, but I took about 3 steps, and I didn't, and those sharp rocks cut my feet. I thought, this ain't really good. And then I thought, well, and it was kind of dusky dark, and I thought, the disciples saw Jesus walking out on the water of the Sea of Galilee. I thought, I wonder if I'm going to look out there, but I didn't see Jesus walking on the water. And then I got to thinking, now this is how a preacher's mind thinks, because he can never just let anything go, right? So I'm thinking, well, this is about where they said that them swine, them demon-possessed pigs come running off the cliff and dove off in here. I thought, that was, the demons left that man and they went in them pigs, and that's why they run off that. And I thought, now wait a minute. When them pigs jumped off there and drowned, they died. Well, when them pigs died, those demons had to go somewhere. They couldn't stay in the dead pig. I thought, what happened to them demons? And I thought, well, I guess maybe they just stayed in the lake. And I thought, wait a minute, I'm in the lake. So I got my feet out of there real quick. So I don't know if it was the demons or the rocks cutting my feet, but I got out of there pretty quick. So, yeah, I don't know. I wasn't taking no chances. I got out of there. But anyway, all right, questions on that? That's just kind of a brief skimming of that. Did I miss one? Which one did I miss? Why didn't Jesus allow the man to go with him? Well, why didn't he? Well, yeah, he had another job for him to do, right? He wants him to go into the area around and tell the people. And he fulfills this mission. If you look in verse 20, he departed and began to proclaim in Decapolis all that Jesus had done for him, and all marveled. So he had another mission for him to do. And Jesus had already picked his 12 that were going with him. Now if I'd have been Jesus, I might have wanted to swap this man for Judas. I don't know. I might have wanted to make a swap, but it wasn't to be that way. He had already picked his 12, and they were all Jewish. This man was Gentile. It was important and necessary that the disciples of the Jewish Messiah be Jewish. I'm convinced of that. This man was Gentile, so he wasn't going to be one of the 12, but he had a significant mission to fulfill nonetheless, and he did a good job doing it. I think there's a spiritual lesson in that as well. You know, we all have a job to do, and you know, I'm doing what I believe God called me to do, which is preaching the pulpit on Sunday morning and in between the pews on Wednesday night. You know, God may not have that for you to do. And you may say, God, I really want to stand in the pulpit and preach. And God may say, hey, I've got something different, even better for you to do. You know, I've never felt, Lisa and I have talked about this, I've never felt called to do foreign missions. You know, I mean, maybe for a short-term week or two, but not like, you know, career, vocational foreign missions where you load up your kids and haul them to China for the next 10 or 15 years. I've just never felt a calling to do that. And I think it's because I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So the man was doing what he was supposed to be doing when he went to the Decapolis, when he went to the area around there. But he wasn't going to go with Jesus and be one of the 12. Yes. Yeah. Well, now see, Miss Coy, you're asking me questions I don't know answers to. I don't know. Yeah. Old Peter, you know, once he got in his right mind, Peter might have took an extra robe and said, here, boy, put some clothes on, you know. I don't know. I can only imagine. It's interesting that in one account, it says, it talks about, and I think it's the same event. I mean, I'd have to look at it again, but it speaks about this man, I guess it had seizures, like what we might call epilepsy or whatever, thrown into the fire or whatever. But the term is moonstruck. He's moonstruck. I always thought that was an interesting term. Literally, that's what the term meant. Of course, Jesus heals him too. So interesting little story. We're going to move on to another event. Now, this is one that kind of has all the elements of mystery and adventure in it, where we find Jesus walking on the water. Now we do have a pretty good idea where this one is. Let's put the next map up there. So he's crossing the Sea of Galilee over to the other side, to the Gentile side, and he puts the disciples in the boat, and they start across. This huge storm takes place. It's at night, very spooky. They look, they see what they think is a ghost. It ends up being Jesus, and Peter says, Lord, if it's you, then let me come walking on the water out to you. And Jesus said, come on, and Peter does. I love Peter because he's so just jump right out there. But so then they come back to, we're told, to Gennesaret. So we know it's in the area around Gennesaret that it happens. Let's take a look at this. I'm now in Matthew's Gospel, chapter 14. Matthew chapter 14, verse 22. Matthew 14, 22. Immediately Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side while he sent the multitudes away. And when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. Now when evening came, he was alone there, but the boat was now in the middle of the sea, tossed by the waves, for the wind was contrary. Now in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went to them walking on the sea. When the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, it is a ghost, and they cried out for fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, be of good cheer, it is I, do not be afraid. And Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water. So he said, come. And when Peter had come down out of the boat, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. But when he saw that the wind was boisterous, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, saying, Lord, save me. And immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and caught him and said to him, O you of little faith, why did you doubt? And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased. Then those who were in the boat came and worshipped him, saying, You truly you are the Son of God. When he had crossed over, they came to the land of Gennesaret. And when the men of that place recognized him, they sent out into all the surrounding region, brought to him all who were sick, and begged him that they might only touch the hem of his garment, and as many as touched it were made perfectly well. Okay, so as I said, there's a lot in this setting of this miracle that would have made the situation terrifying to the disciples. First of all, Jesus has the disciples get in a boat and go to the other side. Now, just to go to the other side is terrifying, because remember, that's Gentile territory. This isn't a nice Jewish land of Galilee. I'm now going to the land of darkness. I'm going to the Gentile land. That's where the demons possess men, and that's where, all sorts of weird things happen. So that in of itself is terrifying. Second, it's night. Okay, so they don't like darkness. Ancient people didn't like darkness. They didn't have a mag light flashlight to break through the darkness. They had, darkness was where the unknown was and the things that could kill you. That's where the thieves and the bandits were. That's where the wild animals were. That's where, you don't see where you're going, and you trip over a rock and hit your head and kill yourself, and nobody finds you till the next day. I mean, night was terrifying to these people. There's a storm that comes up, so that in and of itself is terrifying. They didn't like storms. The Jews didn't like water. They weren't sea people. The Phoenicians were sea people. The Jews, they didn't like water. They took a little hole of water that we would call a lake, and they called it a sea, and they're traveling in this little boat, little bitty boat that's probably, not much longer than one of these pews, and, about as wide as 3 or 4 of them. And they're traveling out in night, and a storm comes up. And to make things more terrifying, where's Jesus? He ain't with them. Now, they've seen him calm the storm before, but remember, he was asleep in the boat. He was with them. Now, Jesus ain't in the boat with me. And in the midst of the storm, I look up, and I see somebody coming, and what do I think? What's the first thought that runs through my mind? It's a ghost. Not it's Jesus, it's a ghost. So there's a whole lot of elements about this that would just terrify the disciples. Okay, so I guess we'll get, the obvious question here. Why did Jesus send them out alone? I mean, before he had been in the boat with them, why send them by themselves? Exactly. He's going to show them who they. He's going to grow them up. He's going to teach them about who he is. He's going to mature their faith. He's going to give them understanding about that. Yeah, right. So, this is part of the test and part of their spiritual growth. I'm with you even if you don't see my physical presence. Is there a lesson in that for you and me? Have you ever been in a situation in your life where you needed God worse than you ever have before, and God seemed to be nowhere to be found? Have you ever found yourself there? Well, I have, and if you haven't, then hang on, because you probably will before this life is over with. Where is God in those times? He's right there with us. It's not as though He abandoned us. But sometimes He doesn't necessarily let us see or feel or sense His presence, because that's part of the growing process. That's part of the test. Are you going to trust me whether or not you can see me, whether or not you can feel me, whether or not you can sense my presence, will you still trust me? You cannot trust God based on how you feel. Because there are times that you may not feel God. And we use this analogy for salvation. There may be times you have to trust what you know and what Scripture teaches. There may be times that you don't feel saved. It doesn't mean that you're not. I use the analogy, married couples. You may wake up one morning and you don't feel married. It doesn't mean that you're not. Your commitments and your walk is not based on how you feel. So that's part of the test here with the disciples and Jesus. Are you going to trust me even if you can't see me or sense my physical presence? Now, Peter sees that it's Jesus. I love Peter because he reminds me of myself, because he always speaks first, thinks last, and is always real sorry afterwards. That's just, and he's very impetuous. Is that the word I'm looking for? Impetuous. He's like, I'm just going to jump off. I always said, my two boys, I said I was raising Peter and Paul, because his boys, Landon, he wanted to sit down and work a puzzle or read a book or something like that. Parker, he wants to climb up on the roof and jump off head first to see if it hurts. That's just, so they're just, that was Peter. So he says to Jesus, Lord, if it's you, or perhaps even to give him more of a benefit of the doubt, Lord, since it's you, is that really you? Let me come to you. Let me walk on the water too. And what does Jesus say? Come on. Oh, come on. Now, see, Peter's opened his mouth. So he gets, but you got to give him credit. He gets out of the boat. I've preached a sermon on this before, and one of my points is you can't walk with Jesus if you're sitting in the boat. You got to get out of the boat. And he gets out of the boat and he starts walking. And then what happens? He looks around, he sees the storm around him, and he gets afraid. And he begins to sink. He takes his eyes off Jesus, starts looking at the storm around him, and he begins to sink. And he hollers, Lord, save me. And Jesus immediately saves him. And he says to him what? Oh, you of little faith, why did you doubt? Well, Lord, because I'm out here walking on the water. I don't know how I'm doing it. Yeah, there's some uncertainty there. But he does have enough faith to get out of the boat. He just doesn't have enough faith to stay afloat, does he? So would you say that his attempt to walk on water was a success or a failure? Kind of a mixture. So how would you say our attempt to walk with the Lord? Is it a success or is it a failure? Kind of both. See, we share more in common with Peter than maybe we even realize. Most of our Christian walk can be characterized like that. There are moments of great faith. Oh Lord, I just want to walk with you. I'm not afraid of anything. I'm not afraid of this world. Just let me get out of the boat and walk with you. And what does Jesus say? Come on. Oh, I didn't know you were going to say, actually, come on. Okay, so I'm going to step out and I'm going to start walking in faith, but Jesus. And then what happens? We get our eyes off Jesus. We begin to look around at the world, and the world's a scary place. And all of a sudden we begin to sink. And what do we say? Lord, save me. He reaches down and saves us because he was there all along. And then what does he say? You failed the test this time. Get back in the boat, get dried off, because you'll have another chance to take the test again, right? What happens if you fail the test? Yeah, you get to take it again. So Lisa and I have taken tests for, 25 years. So, yeah. And I've also learned this. It's far easier to preach about tests than take them yourself. More fun, too. Anyway, all right. So that's Jesus walking on the water and Peter sinking in the water. Questions on that little miracle? Not little miracle, it's a big miracle. But anyway, on those verses. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And when you pass one test, the next test, it's not the same. It's harder, isn't it? So, here's the thing. Here's what I found. Tests that I was taking 20 years ago, that situation happens in my life now. I go, Lord's got this. I'm not worried about that. And then you got, oh yeah, but you also get this little caveat. You get this addendum to your test. And you're like, oh. And so I think what the Lord is really trying to teach me is just trust me. No matter, you're not going to understand it. You can't figure it out. I'm going to take you places you've never been before in your spiritual walk. Are you going to trust me no matter what? And I'll be honest with you. I'll be very honest with you tonight. There are some times that, like Peter, I have great faith and I get out of the boat and I'm walking on the water with Jesus. And there are other times, just like Peter, I look around and I get scared and I sink to the bottom. And Jesus has to reach in and pull me out. But through it all, hopefully we're growing in our faith to the Lord and our maturity with Him. That's the idea. Yeah. 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 I mean, and that's kind of the way this Christian walk goes. There's good times and there's bad times, and everybody gets some of both. You don't get an exemption from either one. And the bad times are used to grow us through that and make us stronger in Him. So, all right, well, let's take a look at another one of these. I'm in Matthew chapter 15, verse 21 now. Matthew 15, 21. So this is going to take place in the area of Tyre and Sidon. I have a map for that. So it's going to be over there in the area of Phoenicia. You don't see Tyre and Sidon labeled, but it's going to be over in that area. So I told you before, Phoenicians, they were the sea people. They liked the water. So Jesus is journeying into that area, and He's going to meet a woman who's asking healing for her daughter. So let's take a look at verse 21 of Matthew chapter 15. Then Jesus went out from there and departed to the region of Tyre and Sidon, and behold, a woman of Canaan came from that region and cried out to Him, saying, Have mercy on me, O Lord, Son of David, my daughter is severely demon-possessed. But He answered her not a word, and His disciples came and urged Him, saying, Send her away, for she cries out after us. But He answered and said, I was not sent except to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Then she came and worshipped Him, saying, Lord, help me. But He answered and said, It is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the little dogs. And she said, Yes, Lord, but even the little dogs eat the crumbs which fall from their master's table. And Jesus answered and said to her, O woman, great is your faith, let it be to you as you desire. And her daughter was healed from that very hour. Okay, here's one of these where you read it at first glance and you want to go, Jesus, what are you talking to this woman like that for? Because this woman comes out and she's beside herself and she says, Lord, my daughter is severely demon-possessed. And Jesus, who's already cast out demons before, now to this woman says, yeah, I'm only sent to the house of Israel. And she goes, Lord, help me. And the disciples are going, send her away. She's tagging along after us. She's bugging us. Send her away. And He goes, I was not sent except to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. He says, this is what He says, it's not good to take the children's bread and give it to the little dogs. Now that's where you want to go, I can't believe Jesus said that. Well, obviously it's a test, and she passes it. It's a test for her, and it's a test for the disciples as well. So he kind of delays in answering because it's apparently a test for both the woman and the disciples. Remember, the disciples are saying, I'll send her away. She doesn't have any part of us. She's not Jewish. you're the Jewish Messiah. Well, she's just bugging us. Send her away. And Jesus said, I'm sent to the house of Israel. It's not good to take the children's bread and give it to the little dogs. Now, we need to break down what's being said here for it to make sense to us. So he says, it's not good to take the children's bread and give it to the little dogs. In Jesus' little proverb here, who are the children? The Jews, that's right. And the bread would be what? The blessings of God. In this case, this miracle, but the blessings and the ministries of God to the Jews. In other words, I'm sent to the Jews, and my ministry, my miracles, the blessings of God belong to the Jews. And he says it's not right to give it to the little dogs. Now, who are the little dogs? The Gentiles. That's right. So the basic meaning of the proverb is, if Jesus is the Jewish Messiah, then it's fitting that his ministry and miracles be performed for the benefit of the Jews. That's what Jesus says. Now, remember, it's a test, yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, she had no right in the sense of her being a Jew and him being the Jewish Messiah, but as is pointed out in this miracle, she has right because he's not just the Jewish Messiah, he's the Savior of the world. And that's what's being taught in this miracle here. So she says to him, yes, Lord, but even the little dogs eat the scraps from the master's table. In other words, she's saying, I'm not asking for you to give me all the blessings. I'm just asking for the leftover blessings. And Jesus says to her, I've not found such great faith in all of Israel. She's put the Jews to the shame. Here, she's not supposed to be entitled to the blessings of the Jews. And Jesus said, yeah, but her faith put all the Jews' faith to shame. This is great faith. He says this is great faith. Why is it great faith? Because it shows her understanding that Jesus is not just the Jewish Messiah, but he's also the Savior of the Gentiles as well. Do what? Yeah, whatever he gave her would be good. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, questions on that? We're out of time. I got one more, and I got a video. My goodness gracious. Look at, let's go to Mark chapter 7. I'm going to do some speed reading here. All right. We just can't not do this because it's so good. Mark 7, verse 31. Mark 7:31. Again, departing from the region of Tyre and Sidon, he came through the midst of the region of the Decapolis to the Sea of Galilee. They brought to him one man who was deaf and had an impediment in his speech, and they begged him to put his hand on him, and he took him aside from the multitude and put his fingers in his ears and spat and touched his tongue. Then looking up to heaven, he sighed and said to him, Ephphatha, which that is, be opened. And immediately his ears were opened, and the impediment of his tongue was loosed, and he spoke plainly. Then he commanded them that they should tell no one, but the more he commanded them, the more widely they proclaimed it. And they were astonished beyond measure, saying, he has done all things well, and makes both the deaf to hear and the mute to speak. Okay, so the Decapolis, and I'm just going to give you this rather than let's go through the discussion of it. Decapolis was a group of 10 cities on the eastern side. Theirs is, you see the picture, on the eastern side of the Sea of Galilee. Comes from Greek word deca, meaning 10, and polis, meaning city, 10 cities that they gained their independence from Jewish rule under the Roman ruler Pompey, and it functioned somewhat autonomously as a city-state in the days of Jesus. So in other words, they kind of had autonomous rule, but they were Gentile in nature. Rome was over them officially, loosely, but for the most part, they had autonomy. In this healing, Jesus demonstrates dependence on the Father. He looks up as he speaks. And the scope of his ministry includes the Gentiles. And the healings weren't always accomplished in the exact same way. Here he touches his tongue. He puts his fingers in the guy's ears. I mean, he does different. Sometimes he speaks the word. Sometimes he puts mud in a blind man's. So Jesus doesn't have to work in the exact same way. I think there's something we need to understand from that. Well, Jesus doesn't always work the exact same way every time. And then he tells, after the healing, he says, don't tell anybody. Why did he tell them not to tell anybody? Yeah. Well, they certainly did that, didn't they? So he tells them, don't tell anybody, because they really didn't understand. Remember, this is Gentile land. They don't understand who he truly is as the Son of God, the Messiah, that he's going to die for the sins of the world. They understand him as a miracle worker, but they don't really understand who he is as the Son of God and the Savior of the world. So he says, don't tell. Not yet, anyway. What do? They all go tell, and everybody knows. So quickly, the summary, what's the purpose of Jesus traveling beyond the region of Galilee? To demonstrate that his gospel is open to all people, not just the Jews. And his disciples come away from these experiences with a deeper understanding of Jesus, because Jesus has now demonstrated his power over demons, power over nature. That he has authority, not just as a Jewish Messiah, but authority over the whole world. All right. I have a 3-minute video. If you can sit with me 3 minutes.